Flint's tap water was laced with dangerous levels of lead.
New synthetic chemicals that are created every hour.
Nearly half of the U.S. population lives in areas with unhealthy levels of air.
Our environment is toxic.
So I wanted to verify what are the top environmental medicine clinics doing about these issues. Is there hope?
Hey friends, welcome back. Thanks for being here. That was Nicholas Pineault, and that's a clip from his new documentary, The Body Burden. And in this one, I start out of the gate with some very good news about Donald J. Trump playing hardball with Bibi Netanyahu in the state of Israel. It's about time. I'll shout it out from the rooftops when Trump does something good for America. But then we dive into the deep end with Nicholas about 5G and the toxins with which we're being bombarded every single day. And of course, this documentary will show you exactly what the good doctors around the country and in good clinics are doing to help their patients recover. The documentary is free, as is this in-depth, important interview. Before we start, just a quick word about a product I'm very, very happy with. Guys, as you know, I don't put my name behind things I don't believe in. You know that about me, so whether it's Masterpiece or Red Light Therapy, I will always tell you the truth. Now, Red Life specifically has genuinely changed how I feel, and that's my personal experience, not just a talking point. Honestly, my joints are feeling better, my sciatica has improved vastly, and I'm enjoying energy for a variety of reasons, eating better, less alcohol, and peptides. But in addition to that, Red Light Therapy from Red Life. I use the Pro Belt every single day, and it's the most practical way to get red light therapy into your daily life, whether you need it in your knees, on your hip, your shoulder, wherever you need it. The Pro Belt is the best, easiest, cheapest way to do red light therapy. And that's without a clinic, without a session, and without a bill that will make you wince. The technology is next level. 9 clinically validated wavelengths, dual chip power, and deeper tissue reach than anything else in this category. This is what functional medicine practitioners have been using for years, and now you can own one for yourself very affordably. Visit myredlight.com, use SGT Rep 30 for 30% off bundles, or SGT Rep 25 for 25% off individual devices like the Pro Belt. Trust me, your best days are not behind you. The link and the coupon codes are below. Hey friends, welcome back. Thanks so much for tuning in. Sean from SGT Report. We're going to start with some news of the day before I bring my guest on. And I just want to say that there is room in my little human brain to consider some of the claims coming from Prometheus Action. And maybe I'll get to that just a little bit here. But Liz Churchill posted this, friend of the show, and she says the EU, the World Economic Forum, and UN replacement migration scheme just took a big hit. Send them back is the massive win for patriots in the EU, where the EU vote totaled 418 to 218 in favor of deportations. So maybe the tide is finally turning against the powers that ought not be on planet Earth, folks. And to that end, I just wanted to share this. I posted this last night, and I have to admit, what's coming from Susan Kakinda here is compelling. But if what she's claiming is true, then what do we do with the 2027 NDAA Section 224 traitors in our midst? Here's Susan's spin on this whole Iran war thing.
3 days before the G7 summit in Avian, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney flew to Ireland, and he warned what was coming. He said that countries
are navigating a global rupture, not a quiet transition. The post-Cold War world of rules-based order is breaking down.
Carney had no idea how right he was. And at the summit, Donald Trump demonstrated it with this stunning comment about Israel and Syria.
And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah. Because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it. I didn't like where 2 hours before we're signing the agreement that there was an attack in Lebanon, in Beirut. I did not like that. I let them know that. I didn't like it, not at all. But I think that Syria, he's pulled that country together amazingly quickly. He's very capable, and he's been very good for me. And if Israel can't do the job, without killing everyone else, he'll do the job. Syria will do the job.
So, in what world does the President of the United States push aside Israel and suggest that the Syrian president, who had been the leader of an al-Qaeda-affiliated group, step in? Not in the world that Carney is mourning. It's a new world, and this week it arrived with Donald Trump at the G7.
Guys, I'll pause it there. Everybody should go check this out and think for yourself, because, again, all I've been saying for a very long time is I don't want any sitting U.S. president to be in the pocket of Israel and the Rothschilds. Kakinda makes the point that now Trump is negotiating outside of that Rothschild Rockefeller pre-existing apparatus and going directly to the leaders themselves, as sovereign nation states should do. Meanwhile, over here, we got the mainstream media, The Telegraph, saying how Trump's Operation Epic Disaster turned the world against America. Donald Trump wanted to bring the Islamic Republic to its knees. He failed on all counts. And that's not entirely untrue, of course. The straits were open. Then, because of Trump, the straits were closed. But does this entire operation dismantle the Rothschild Rockefeller oil money-making machine that they benefit from? Guys, this clip from the Leah Files, she discusses Trump signing the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, 2 days early. Why did he do that?
Number one, Trump signed the MOU in person in Versailles yesterday, 2 days early. Live signing was supposed to be in Geneva, so apparently JD Vance was the one that digitally signed it. Trump did not sign it at all. This was his live signature. They were going to go to Geneva. JD Vance, the US still wants him to go for this live signing. Iran's like, no, it's done. We all signed it. We don't need to go to Geneva. Interestingly enough, Netanyahu yesterday posted that he was meeting with his head of Mossad, and everyone in the comments was like, is this a threat? Who are you assassinating next? Trump signs the MOU in person. And part of me wonders if he was just concerned for going and doing it live, being a sitting duck, the blue and white country would ruin it, find a way to ruin it, like they do everything else.
I'm not sure exactly what she's alluding to, the threat of assassination or God knows what, but Trump signed it to Israel's surprise 2 days early because the world needs peace. The world economy needs peace. The world's economy needs oil. And here's a very stern, harsh warning from Vice President J.D. Vance to Bibi Netanyahu and his warmongering cabinet specifically.
What I will say, and this does bother me, is that you've seen people within Bibi's cabinet who have come out and attacked the deal and in some ways very personally attacked the President of the United States. And I guess my message to them would be twofold. Number one, Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And he happens to be the head of state of the world's superpower. If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world.
Guys, let that sink in, because it's true. I don't think there's another world leader that's willing to put up with one more war crime from the state of Israel other than Donald J. Trump. And let me just play this very quick clip from Tucker Carlson, who I think is outlining what I'm feeling, which is if this is the new hardball Trump, I welcome it. By the way, when you think about the factions within the deep state, even in the United States itself, you got to think about the CIA, the formation and funding of Al-Qaeda, and you got to wonder what kind of chess is being played here within factions that are at war with each other, and in this case, maybe Israel. Listen to this.
It's appropriate that we release the agreement, and we did send a copy to Israel, by the way.
We sent Israel a copy of the agreement. Well, you sent them a copy, did you? You BCC'd them? We just reached the outline of a peace agreement with the country we are fighting with Israel without consulting Israel, bitch. That's exactly what that means. Shh, adults are talking. At one point, he said, I just think it's just too much. I think going forward, we may leave the fight against Hezbollah to Jelani, who runs Syria. Now, Jelani, of course, is a former Al-Qaeda leader. He's just a more reasonable person. If you're looking for humane treatment of civilians, you got to go to the Al-Qaeda guy, not the Israeli prime minister. That's what the president said. It's unbelievable.
And the last thing I'll say before I introduce my guest, guys, is that I think Americans would forgive Donald J. Trump for almost any crime if he would just put America first and stop letting the tail wag the dog. I'm talking about Israel giving Trump and our elected politicians marching orders. But that brings me back to my question for Kakinda. If what she's saying is true, what do we do about the NDAA 2027 Section 422 traitors who want to merge the U.S. military with the Israeli military. We'll keep our eyes on this story, and I will bring you the truth as I see it every single day. Let me introduce our returning guest, Nicholas Pinault. He's the EMF guy, journalist, and producer of a new film, The Body Burden, The Toxins We Carry. Nicholas, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
How are you, brother? And how are you doing in these times of tumult?
I'm doing my best to focus on myself, and the world news are somewhat overwhelming, but what I've been focusing on is another overwhelming topic, the topic of all the toxins we're exposed to globally, and that has kind of permeated my brain for the last 2 years now.
Well, we're going to show the trailer in just one second. And what happened here is, Nicholas, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you sent me an email basically saying that you're investigating environmental medicine, where doctors, of course, good doctors, try to help patients sickened by EMF radiation, heavy metals, and other toxins. So you went on a trip to some of the top clinics in North America to see things firsthand. And that investigation turned into The Body Burden, the documentary. Do I have that about right?
Exactly right. And it did give me hope, because in the end, I saw a lot of patients there who, some of them were losing their minds in their early 40s, kind of this new diagnostic that they invented called early onset Alzheimer's that now we're seeing in people in their 30s even. And they were able to get better, and to reverse that, it turns out, they were just toxic. They weren't sick. They did not have a genetic problem. It was simply they're getting poisoned by all sorts of things that we are exposed to on a everyday basis, especially for some people in the scope of their work. Working with pesticides on a golf course, or working in front of a computer is a hazard because of, you're sedentary. But a lot of people, it's what they did in their lifetime that really matters. And over decades, they accumulate these toxins inside their body. And now there's a branch of medicine that I discovered that knows what to do with these patients.
Okay, I want more on that. We're going to watch the trailer in just one second, but let's bookmark that and come back to it. Early onset Alzheimer's, because a lot of times when I hear that, and I do hear that a lot now, people in their 40s, sometimes younger, we're supposed to believe this is completely normal, but you're right. The toxins and the war against humanity is cumulative. So, I always go, well, I wonder if they took the bioweapon masquerading as a vaccine. It could be. It could be vaccines. It could be EMF radiation. It could be GMO foods, or, as you noted, working with Roundup crops, things like that. Or it could be all of the above. It's cumulative, guys. And that's why it's so important, in my view, to take Masterpiece, get this stuff out of your body. But number two, it's important for you guys to understand the truth about the war against humanity, including 5G. Here's Nicholas's website, a free guide, 5G in 5 minutes. But I want to play this clip for you, Nicholas. And I need your thoughts on it, because if this is true, well, guess what? The war against humanity is ramped up, and many of us don't even know that. This is regarding 6G, and I hope this man's wrong, but according to him, 5G towers in many cases have already been quote-unquote upgraded, I would call them weapons enhanced, to 6G.
So the technological singularity has to do primarily with the technology of the 5G towers, which have been upgraded to 6G terahertz, which is 1,000 times more powerful than 5G waves. We now have millimeter waves under 6G terahertz. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. Then we have NATO airplanes dumping smart dust particulates, biosensors, full of graphene, aluminum, titanium, lithium, strontium, barium, etc., arsenic poison, probably. Anyway, they've been dumping that like every 10 minutes, 16 hours a day, everywhere in the world for 2 years now. And previously, they were dumping it at a slower pace. That's 7G technology. In other words, it's still the 6G terahertz electronic energy, but now that energy is bouncing off all the air pollution, all the particulates in the sky, and it's bouncing off all the bunny rabbits and squirrels and birds and bees. The bees are all augmented now with the smart dust. All the humans are out there running and cycling and getting out and hiking up Half Dome in Yosemite Park and going to see what's left of Glacier National Park. There are no glaciers in Glacier National Park. If you didn't know, it's Glacier National Park minus the glaciers. But if you're out there getting exercise and feeling good about yourself, just know you're polluting the heck out of your skin, your eyes, your breathable air, your lungs are ingesting all of these nanoparticulates, which include biosensors, which hook you up to the cloud, which hook you up to each other and turn you into a human antenna. And God forbid, if you're vaccinated and boosted, or you get a flu shot, or you go to the dentist a lot and get lidocaine injections, you are aglow. You are aglow with radio frequency. But my point is that whatever radio frequency weapons we had 5 years ago are greatly enhanced by the air pollution and the weather warfare, because not only can the pollution particulates in our sky that linger for days, not only are those particulates capable of tracking and targeting humans in zip codes, they also can modify the weather.
They also can modify the weather. Now, guys, here's the thing. When I've had Matt Hazen and Jesse Beltran on, they talked about the human antenna. I mean, that's exactly what we've been talking about on this show, Nicholas. And God help us if they've already upgraded 5G to 6G. And by the way, guys, did you hear in that sound clip the mention of lithium? They're spraying lithium. You know what's so crazy about that, Nicholas? I remember hearing it posited by some of these snakes, right, in the deep state, CIA type people saying, you know, in the future, you know, these are the same people that talk about trying to discover the God particle to control humanity. These are the same people that talk about poisoning humanity with the Lone Star tick so that people can't eat red meat. These are the same groups of people. And I once heard it posited by one of these snakes that they could spray lithium in the skies to keep human beings docile as they take over everything and wage war on humanity. What are your thoughts on that clip? 5G, now 6G.
It's tough. A lot of these technologies that are talked about might be happening. I don't know if they're happening. The reality is that a lot of them might be, you know, technologies used by the military. What we know is that right now the 5G rollout has been ongoing, and 6G, as far as a commercial use by the telecoms, has not been used. However, it's, you know, we don't know exactly what's being emitted by different military technologies, some of which are very old radar systems that they use to try to modify the weather and do all sorts of experimentation in the ionosphere. So, I mean, I wouldn't, it's not like I would trust anyone in government or military to try to minimize the emissions towards citizens. And at this point, all I know, and my work focuses on the fact that, you know, all the exposures that we're getting, and it's not just, you know, a lot of people are focused on 5G, but you have to understand that none of the Gs before 5G was safe. You know, when I started this work in 2016, I was following certain researchers who started to have concerns towards EMF exposures in the 1970s, especially military personnel exposed to radar that were getting sick. Eventually, these radars, you know, became cell towers in a sense, with different frequencies, different intensities, but they're not any better. And eventually they became, you know, small radars in your pocket, and next to your head is called a phone, a smartphone. So all of these things, all of these technologies are causing oxidative stress in the body. The thing that I have been looking at, and, you know, geoengineering feeds into that, but also the global poisoning of the environment, whatever they're spraying on the food or in the air, all of it is cumulative, but it's not only cumulative. In fact, it's not cumulative, it's multiplicative. And that's really what the science shows. You know, if you look at the work of Dr. Ronald Kostoff, who published great papers on EMF toxic synergies, essentially what happens is that in animal models and in cells and in many, many studies that he could find in his review, when you have, let's say, lead in the environment, that could be in your water, that could be, you know, in whatever they're spraying, lead is just one of the many heavy metals that is currently found in nearly every human being. And of course, you know, a few generations back, it was ubiquitous. Even, you know, my mom's and dad's generations, it was in the paint, it was in the gasoline, and it's still found all around the environment. When you have a certain dose of lead in animal models that the animals can tolerate, you add an EMF, let's say a cell phone, and all of a sudden that same animal cannot tolerate that dose. All of a sudden, that toxicity from the lead becomes multiplicatively more toxic. So it's one agent plus one agent equals not 2 units of damage, it's 4 units or 10 units of damage. The problem that he poses, and I don't have an answer for it, but we can see it in the population and in the chronic diseases, is that when you add lead, but you also add arsenic and you add aluminum, some of which could be from geoengineering, from what I could gather, but also other things, anything that you add to it is multiplicative. So we simply don't know what is the safe amount of lead that a human being should have at this point. It's probably 0, but what is the safe amount of cell phone radiation that one should have from a 3G tower, 4G tower, 5G tower, and whatever other Gs that they're using for military uses, including satellites, but also the rollout of technology is continuing, and things are becoming more and more and more stressful because they are optimized for connectivity and data gathering, surveillance purposes, and not for human health. They're not compatible with human health. So really, my big concern is that all our safety limits, it's not like a lot of people listening to your show will believe in safety limits. Of course, they're set by institutions that are captured by the different industries they're supposed to regulate. But essentially, these safety limits are almost meaningless because they only take into account one single exposure at a time. But the human being, and you don't live in a vacuum. You are exposed to thousands of factors on an everyday basis. And saying, oh well, the dose of arsenic I have is low enough, and the dose of lead is low enough, and my cell phone is, it's low radiation, then why is everyone getting sick? One of the reasons is that all our safety data is meaningless at this point because we are being overwhelmed by the environment. So all of these technologies, they all matter. And I kind of disagree with the guy in the video in a sense, because I did hear from some of my readers, what should I do? Should I still go outside? Right? And it's kind of this conundrum, right? The environment is toxic. There might be things sprayed from the sky. There might be things in your park, pesticides. But at the same time, you got to try to find a spot of nature where you can go, because in the end, staying in a cave or a bunker doesn't cut it either. So it is a difficult personal choice to find your center among all of these exposures. And the good news is, look, I looked into people that were sick because they were overwhelmed from all these exposures. They had accumulated things over a lifetime, and all of a sudden they broke, where they couldn't walk anymore. Neurodegenerative diseases. If you go see a regular doctor, they're going to tell you, oh, well, we don't know exactly what the cause is. It might be from the environment. And you ask them, okay, what do you mean by environment? Well, it's undefined. You have a idiopathic illness, which is we don't know the cause. Well, in the end, detoxification, it was still possible in these people, and they could get better. So what I want people to focus on is that, yes, we're getting poisoned. I'm not arguing with that. In fact, I am more alarmed than any time before. It's my 16th year as a citizen journalist around environmental toxins. Things are not getting better, but the human body can heal, and it can withstand incredible amounts of assault. And the good news is that if you focus on an everyday basis on making your environment cleaner and then getting what's accumulating inside your body out, you can in fact live a fairly good life. And for some people, they feel way better. And I'm one of them. Once I started applying these principles that I learned from environmental medicine, I started getting better myself. And I just felt like, my God, I was in a sort of daze in the last couple of years, feeling a lot of brain fog and not even knowing it.
Well, I feel you there, brother. And let me just say, Isaiah chapter 54:17, the powerful promise from God is this: when he assured his people that no weapon formed against them will prosper. And I would just add to the story there, guys, that yes, our immune systems are incredibly powerful, so much so that I think the New World Order and the powers that ought not be are a little surprised they haven't killed more of us more quickly. And I would remind people that you have to get outside. I mean, go outside barefoot and do grounding. do gardening and, work with the soil in your hands, and you're going to get this exchange of electrons from the earth, which I tell you what, guys, that's how you prevent depression. And I think in many cases, that's how you prevent disease. I want to share the trailer here. We're going to talk about what is working at these clinics in terms of therapies and protocols. But here's the trailer for Body Burden, the toxins we carry.
So close to the students is wrong.
Yes, and there is one thing that everyone can agree on, and that's we just don't know enough about it.
Flynn's tap water was laced with dangerous levels of lead.
New synthetic chemicals that are created every hour.
Nearly half of the U.S. population lives in areas with unhealthy levels of
Our
air.
environment is toxic.
So I wanted to verify what are the top environmental medicine clinics doing about these issues. Is there hope? She told me, Nick, you have to see what we're doing. We're gonna have you test it and see what's inside your body. In a world that is increasingly toxic, how can we truly heal? Two students of the best doctors in environmental medicine literally improving these protocols, adapting them to the new exposures that people have nowadays. I've never really been on an experience like this, testing my body and being the guinea pig for such an experiment. I'm a healthy 37-year-old. Even then, I have massive amount of two known neurotoxins, and these results were very disastrous for me.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hit it.
I saw people who had immense body burden.
They were completely debilitated, not able to even stand up on their own.
The color was back in my face. It was like I was back to life.
It means we can heal. You can feel better right now.
Powerful. Powerful, Nick. I mean, well done, man. I got to tell you, we talk about these problems consistently. I talk about some solutions like Masterpiece. Okay, the science is clear. The methodology of the use of this product is clear, and it does, scientifically proven, help get a lot of these heavy metals, graphene, etc., out of the body. But there are a whole bunch of other therapies and protocols. What did you find? What works?
Sauna, sweating. Sweating is extremely powerful. Just yesterday I was in my, I don't know how many sauna sessions I've done since the movie. The movie was shot originally 1.5 years ago, and since then I've been on a sauna protocol 3 times per week, minimum 45 minutes each time.
No kidding.
In a sauna. The goal is to just sweat a lot, and the reason is that a lot of people are of course we have detoxification pathways. We have the liver is extremely powerful, and the regeneration, the liver tissue can regenerate itself quite well even if you have liver damage. The kidneys are working full time. You got to make sure that all these things are working. But on top of that, adding sweating is like adding an extra third kidney in a sense. When it comes to eliminating probably certain heavy metals, certain pesticides, it's unclear everything that we are excreting in the sauna, but does it matter? That's kind of the question. The thing I learned from environmental medicine is that we can only test for, you'd say, over 100 different chemicals and heavy metals and contaminants in the environment. How many chemicals and contaminants is there in the environment that we cannot test for? We don't even know. It's thousands. So in reality, because of all these exposures are, you cannot test for it. You could say, oh, they're spraying something in the sky and there might be things in there that are synthetic that we don't even know exist. So therefore, you don't even have a testing mechanism for it. If it poisons the body, where is it stored? Where it could be stored in fat, it could be stored in the bones, like certain metals. But in the end, what would get these things out if they exist? It would be the same thing that gets anything out. It would be, you got to make sure to go to the bathroom daily. You got to make sure that your different detox organs are working. But if you sweat regularly, you're adding the best chance on your side. So it's a huge part of environmental medicine. In fact, Dr. Walter Crinian, one of the, unfortunately, who passed away in 2018, 2019, was one of the pioneers in environmental medicine. And he had certain protocols where people were using sauna more than once per day. And of course, it was an in-clinic protocol. When you use sauna a lot, you got to rehydrate. But it's just something that I had realized for myself shooting the film. I said, I had to admit on camera, I have a sauna at home and I use it maybe once every quarter. I never do it. Why? I'm busy. I'm, researching EMFs and spending time sitting at this computer being sedentary. So that's not right. In the end, I didn't have, this normal this normal detoxification pathway that was open. So the number one thing is sauna or just sweating in general. So it means if you're in a very hot climate, going outside, sweating is not the most comfortable thing for certain people. You got to take a shower after it or have a workout, and it can be it can be gentle if people are not in shape right now. You don't have to do a lot to start sweating. The important thing is to open these detox pathways. And what a lot of people told me is kind of crazy. Some people have unlearned how to sweat. And that's actually a thing where if you don't sweat for a while, it will be more difficult to get in the sauna and start sweating. And once you do it again regularly, not only will your number of sweat glands increase, there's literally your body is starting to make more sweat glands as it acclimates to this new protocol, but also you will have, larger sweat glands. So in a sense, it's like adapting to cold, to heat, to a new diet, to maybe a new time zone when you fly, overseas. You can acclimate to more sweating. So that's also something that I learned from these doctors where, if you get in the sauna, some people literally would spend 30 minutes in the sauna, not even sweat a drip. And they would say, well, is there something wrong with me? Well, not really. It's just that your body forgot how to use this system. So you just got to be consistent with it. And I guess, one of the primary messages I also got from these doctors, of course, some people get rapid results where maybe you do a week at one of these centers and you feel pretty good. But, getting some of these toxins out, especially lead and certain heavy metals that are preferably stored in bones, it takes years. So at this point, I feel much better than a year and a half ago, and I did different advanced strategies such as chelation therapy to get the lead out, and it turns out I only tackled about 7% of my lead so far. So that being said, I feel better. So it's better to get the lead out than to keep it in anyway, but it is a long journey, and it doesn't take, of course, 1 week to accumulate these toxins. So it's not really plausible that it would take 1 week to get them out, right? So you need the right strategies, and you need to be persistent and consistent with them. And most people who do that feel way better over time.
Just jotting down some notes here. You mentioned sauna. So here's my notes, guys, and we'll circle back. But hot sauna, infrared sauna, of course, the nanozeolite masterpiece. These are just things that I think are helpful. Red light therapy, hyperbaric chambers. That's kind of new for a lot of people. Hydrogen water and lots of clean water every single day. Jeff Berwick, by the way, has invited me and my wife to go down to his ranch and try his Tesla device. He knows I'm skeptical, but very, very open-minded, and he swears it's going to help me with my knees. So more on that in coming weeks, folks. And I guess I'd ask you this, brother. And by the way, we have a hot sauna where I go to the gym every single day, and I never use it. To your point, man, I'm crazy not to be using the hot sauna. So 45 minutes, is that what you said, 3 days a week?
Yeah, I mean, even if you did 15, if you're already hot from a workout, that's a way to even cut down the time in the sauna, because you'll sweat, right away if you're already, you did your exercise and you go after. So that's a good strategy. Even doing, yoga or stretching before the sauna kind of gets your body hot, and then you get in the sauna. You don't even have to do 45 minutes, but you kind of find your sweet spot. For sauna, it's just important to not feel completely wiped out afterwards. Some people told me they get in the sauna after that, I feel like I haven't slept in weeks. That's either dehydration or you went too far or too hard too quick. And for some people that are too sedentary, part of the reason you might feel wiped is because of the toxins coming out also. So it's something where if you don't feel good in a sauna, you start with 5 minutes and then 7 minutes and then 10 minutes. And over time, you find your perfect session where, I do it in the morning. I don't want to feel wiped. So 45, I'm able to handle. But even just a few months ago, I was more like towards 30, and I keep the temperature just low enough but high enough so I can sweat. So again, you find your perfect temperature. It doesn't have to be, extreme temperature where you feel like you're gonna die in there. So it's not like you're not trying to run a marathon there. You're just trying to calm down your body and let the sweat come out. The medical doctors told me it's not. The most important thing is not the type of sauna or even the protocol. Is just, are you sweating? If you're sweating, you're doing something right.
So in that trailer, it notes that your levels of mercury were high. I think you just said your levels of lead are high. Were those the two highest? Okay, the most egregious ones? And then why? What do you attribute that to? Were you able to put your finger on how the heck that happened?
No. Mercury, I did spend time with my family in Japan, Thailand, Vietnam. I did hear that in certain of these Southeastern Asia countries, they have more lead exposure in the environment, but lead is ubiquitous. I mean, for all I know, it could be lead in chocolate. That is a very common contaminant in soils. I'm a huge chocolate lover, it's probably too much, but the doctors were really baffled, and I'm talking about environmental medicine doctors. 4 different physicians told me, look, the levels of lead you have are equivalent to what we would see in a welder over a lifetime. So, what do you do as a job? I said, well, I'm a journalist. I spend time in front of a computer. Okay, well, do you filter your water? Yes. So they couldn't really tackle it. The mercury, again, fish, seafood, but you might be exposed through so many different areas. And something I've been looking at, that is quite obvious. Individual A and B and C, it might be even in your family, like your wife and you and your kids do not have the same ability to detoxify from some of these compounds. That's something very, very important to remind people. In fact, some people roughly have 5 to 10 times the ability to detox certain compounds compared to their neighbor, and it has to do with your genetic and epigenetic expression. And it's a well-known fact, even in how you're able to handle certain pharmaceutical drugs, such as Tylenol. So certain people would have a dose of Tylenol, and they are at risk for, if they take a certain dosage, they were at risk to have organ damage. But maybe their neighbor can handle 10 times the dose and be fine. So we're not all the same. And this is also the problem I have with the safety limits, is that it doesn't take into account that some populations are extremely have a hard time detoxifying from these agents. So for me, it probably is the case. It's something I'll look into more closely in the future on how can I avoid getting myself in the same trouble. But in the end, what the doctors say is, of course, if you have a body burden that's detectable, okay, there's lead, there's mercury. I also had mycotoxins from mold that were quite elevated. That's another thing that you can get from water damaged buildings or even from food. But normally you might be able to handle that. But on top of the lead and the mercury and the EMFs and the whatnot is sprayed, of course, it makes it that your detoxification organs can only work on so much at a time. So eventually you have a backlog to take care of. It's like being indebted, and your debt is getting higher and higher and higher over time with interest. And that's kind of the situation a lot of people find themselves in. But basically what you need to do is to avoid getting more toxins in while you try to get the accumulation down. And that's a difficult thing to do, but there are certain very simple principles that some of them are a little bit more costly, but filtering the air at home is a good idea. After the documentary, I installed an air filter in my bedrooms, this master bedroom and my kids' bedroom. We have water filtration. What I did is I tested my water from the tap, and I tested my water once filtered, filtered to make sure the filter is filtering. And that's a bit extreme. It costs a few $100s, but I knew that my filter is working well. Now the thing you need to do is, are you changing your filters? A lot of people say, well, I'm kind of 1 year late. Well, if you're 1 year late on the filters, it's not filtering as well, and maybe not filtering at all at this point. So you need to change the filters. And I know it's an extra expense. I mean, everything is, but sometimes, I found myself buying a lot of supplements, trying different things. Well, I feel better using these supplements and these different modalities. But in the end, a filter is not as exciting, maybe as a new supplement you want to try, but it is something will minimize how much you're getting in per day. So it's kind of part of their framework in environmental medicine. The first thing they ask a patient is, what are you exposed to every single day? That's what's coming from your tap. That's the bite of foods that you're taking into your mouth and down in your body, and also the air you breathe in spaces where you spend a lot of time. That could be your home, your car, your workplace. So that it's fairly simple. And then you try to find, okay, well, I don't know, in my workplace, it always smells moldy. What's up with that? And some of these places are also extremely, extremely high in EMFs. And part of my work, the last 10 years is really helping people minimize EMFs. That's where turning off Wi-Fi at night, making sure that you can opt for wired technologies for your computer and devices rather than wireless. It does help, even though, of course, the environmental exposures now from cell towers and satellites and Wi-Fi from neighbors are tremendous already. But if you cut down on what you install in your home, you're already, you're doing the same. You're trying to avoid adding more insult to injury here.
I want to ask you about chelation therapy since you mentioned that. But first, before I do that, we'll circle back in just 1 second. I want to share this clip regarding saunas and how to get Pfizer and Moderna mRNA out of your body. Now, the other thing I want to mention too, guys, is if you go over to X and you just type into the search bar, mRNA technology in our food, you're going to find out that is now happening. And this stuff, they want to get us one way or the other. And again, that nanozeolite product Masterpiece, that stuff is scientifically proven to help get this stuff out of your body. And I'll try to leave a link below to that particular study. There's several studies on that. But additionally, what if you took the Masterpiece and then you sweated it out in a sauna? Because again, that is one of the mechanisms by which you remove this stuff, through your pee, fecal matter, and sweat. Listen to this.
How to get Pfizer and Moderna mRNA out of your body.
Sweat, heavy sweating. Right, get in the sauna as often as you can and sweat that garbage out. We know the Pfizer messenger RNA, Moderna mRNA spike protein is found in human sweat, and sweat is a form of detoxification of other toxins as well. And so we believe one very natural, very easy way to help rid the body of this garbage is to sweat. Now, obviously, exercise, heavy exercise, intense exercise is one way, but so is sitting in, a very high temperature sauna to get rid of that garbage. We've seen lots of case report evidence, anecdotal evidence, and Dr. McCullough's patients have reported symptom improvement by doing that.
It's so interesting, Nick. I'm glad we have you on today because, again, I have a sauna at my fingertips I can use for free every single day, and I'm going to start using it, man. I got to tell you. The other thing I wanted to ask you is regarding chelation therapy, which you mentioned. Jeff Berwick traveled to see Dr. Anna Mielcha for just that, chelation therapy, to get this stuff out of his blood. He wanted to get his blood tested, and Jeff Berwick, who lives in Mexico, eats healthy, and lives in a healthier place than many of us do here in the United States. His blood levels were high for a lot of this stuff. So what did chelation therapy do for you, and what specifically was it? Sort of what mechanisms were involved in chelation therapy?
Yeah, there's different pharmaceutical drugs that were used for lead poisoning or poisoning from other heavy metals that are injectables. And these chelating agents can help get the metals out of the body. And they do not just take the lead or mercury or cadmium and other heavy metals out of the body. They can also get rid of the calcium and magnesium and zinc and other things that you need. So that's why normally when you do chelation therapy, you follow the help of a physician and you take blood levels of different minerals. You want to make sure that you remineralize your body, because you're going to get the bad stuff out, but also some of the good. And you want to make sure that you don't fall into these nutritional deficiencies that also can make you weak. But overall, what I felt on the chelation therapy is that, it was very profound. On my third session, it was essentially every 2 weeks. I had a physician in Ottawa administer it, because go figure, the the Inquisition here in Quebec, that I call them, the Collège des Médecins, the head of the physicians of Quebec decided that chelation therapy, oh no, this is banned from the province of Quebec. I found that out when I tried to find a physician who could administer it for myself here in Montreal, and I said, why is it banned? I don't understand. And it turns out I had to drive 2 hours and a half to go to Ottawa to get that administered. I still don't know to this day why it's banned, but anyway, I can look into it. But it's the usual suspects of people who just want things to be their way, and oh no, this is not the approved protocol and this is quackery, blah blah blah. But overall, chelation therapy, if you go to the US, you have in most states that I'm aware of, you have physicians that can administer it. And why I would follow a physician is that it needs to be under proper care, especially if you're already weak. But overall, what I experienced after the third session is really a vast improvement in my mood, in my mental ability. I even had, certain profound things happen, like recalling old songs from when I was like a young boy, like very bizarre stuff. I'm like, is this my brain, all of a sudden like cleaning up, and, now all of a sudden I can access new parts of my brain. But I can tell you it's been profound. And after that, it was a few months after I really continued seeing benefits from the chelation even after. But I think it was a mix of the chelation and the sauna. But when you have lead in the body, or when you have certain heavy metals that are very, very elevated like that, you can go the slow route, and it will take many, many years if you're able to get rid of the lead ever, depending on your body's ability to do so. Chelation therapy is just more efficacious. So to this day, it's one of the strategies I would consider following, especially for certain people that have heavy metal poisoning, but also certain people that have dental amalgams, huge sources of mercury in their mouth every day that leach into their body. So most of them should probably consider chelation therapy. And that's why, I would seek the help of an environmental medicine physician. If you look on the internet, the National Association of Environmental Medicine, or the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, they have a lot of physicians all around North America who, could advise you on these things. It's not something to take lightly, but these are very profound therapies that even some of my close colleagues, one of them is I think in his late 20s, early 30s, found the same thing as me, sky high lead. And he started, he was a healthy guy, exercising a lot, high performance, and yet his lead was incredibly high. It turns out when he started getting it out, he felt way better. So it's like our global mental ability, the way that I suspected it was years ago because of the EMFs increasing in the environment. But I feel like everyone is at a fraction of their mental capability. So if we are to try to tackle the incredible evils of this world and the incredible problems, I feel like in a sense, getting rid of your own body burden, doing your best and being consistent is a way to regain your ability to think for yourself and to make a difference. And for me, it made such a huge difference that now I feel super excited for my work, even though, of course, all this stuff is super daunting and frustrating on a daily basis. But I'm just, a calmer, more loving person, and I'm just able to think for longer periods of time, and my ability to get good work done in this world has just improved as a result.
Yeah, well, you look good too, man. And you look good in that documentary. You look fit. I'm going to share it here with folks, and we're going to tell people, I think, how you can watch this for free. You get 48 hours access. Nick will tell us if that's still true, but let me scroll down. Of course, he's done these documentaries in the past. This is a good one, too, about just EMF. Here's the documentary that I believe folks can watch for free. Now, I haven't watched this myself, but it looks like, those biohacking documentaries that are out there. I mean, you really went deep into this thing. So I think I want to watch this tonight with my wife. Are we able to do that for free, Nick?
Yes, definitely. Anyone in the world can always watch for 2 days, and it's a 1 hour documentary. I wanted to keep it very simple, and in the end, it's not as much about biohacking and modalities that are bizarre. Of course, there's a lot of modalities that I use in the documentary, and I think it will be surprising for a lot of people what these physicians recommend. But it ends on a good note where, in the end, you need to sweat more. You need to watch what's in your environment and try to filter things out that you can, like the air, water, and try to eat as cleanly as possible. Food direct from a farm is ideal. I'll go pick up my first, CSA organic basket here in Montreal tomorrow. I'm super excited because during the next 4 months, we're going to have, food that was literally grown and picked the same morning. So it's just incredible quality. That's how you're able to get better, is by changing your environment, changing your inputs. And then there are strategies that they talk about in the documentary that are about getting tested, getting this stuff out, and a lot of patients' testimonials that you'll learn about. Some exposed to mold, some exposed to heavy metals. Some people end up, with bizarre symptoms. One guy was losing his mind at the beginning of his 40s there, and it's just some of these stories are hard to hear. The guy couldn't even remember the name of his close friends, and he at one point it was so bad he couldn't write an email. At like 45 years old, like how can that happen? When I see that, I'm like, I'm extremely glad that he found help with the physician that will not put him in a mental ward or simply say, again, you have mystery illness. It is neurodegeneration. So therefore, you are bound to get worse and worse and worse in the next years. And sorry, there's not much we can do for you. Here's a pill to try to slow down that process. Instead, they realized he was a construction worker. He was, exposed to all the nasties you can have in construction work. A lot of the guys don't put their masks on, and you know how it is, and they get exposed to asbestos and lead and this and that. And in the end, it was completely toxic. And when he started working at this clinic, started to get better, and now his mind is back 100%. In fact, he's probably better than in his 20s. So I hope that it gives some hope to people who listen to your show, because I know how dire the situation is. And I mean, I am, for some people think I'm only about EMFs. I spend time looking at geoengineering, the vaccine debate and safety and all other things you can imagine. That's all things that concern me a lot. And in the end, I was trying with this documentary to just reframe the problem and say, okay, yes, the world is toxic. Yes, we are getting poisoned. And yes, we have to fight against these things so that we clean up the world. But in the meantime, what do we do? Is there anything that we can do in the meantime? And you mentioned, the zeolites, very, very excellent. Also, sweating, breathing techniques to oxygenate your body, and then avoidance. So I hope that at least is going to give a little bit of a direction to people listening to this.
Yeah, I think it's helpful, and I look forward to watching it either tonight or over the weekend. And I don't know what to title this, but it just might be real matter of fact on the point. The toxins within: sweat, detox, and chelate. I mean, I guess those are three really good solutions. In addition to that, I would recommend Masterpiece. All right, guys, here is the website. I will leave it linked below. Again, all you got to do is click on that Watch More tab as you scroll down the page. That's what I'm on right now. And then you can enter your information to watch for free for 48 hours. That's a pretty good deal. Nicholas, thank you so much. I'm glad you did the documentary, and thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, are you active, by the way, on X or anywhere else? Where can people follow you?
Instagram, Facebook, a little bit on X, and that's it from now. TheEMFguy.com is where to find me.
All right. Very good. Guys, the links are below. Nicholas has been our guest. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, friends, appreciate you too. If you're still with us, thank you. There is good news, and I led with some good news at the top of the show. If Trump starts playing hardball with Israel and the Rothschilds and the bankers, I will be thrilled. I'd forgive him for just about everything if he would do that. So an open mind and a path to U.S. sovereignty and making America great again, I'm all for it. That's exactly what I'm for, folks. I just don't suffer from Stockholm syndrome. So when I feel betrayed, I will call a spade. And when he does the things I need him to do, I will shout that from the rooftops as well. Guys, the links are below, and I'll remind you every single day for free. Check us out to get the real news 24/7 at sgtreport.com. And until next time, may God bless you and yours. Bye-bye.
BIS and IMF, World Bank, and 63 other banks to this day have complete and total immunity from search and seizure, from investigation. Most of them don't even pay taxes. You can't audit them. And the worst part is, at the same time, they gave it to the United Nations, and 76 tentacles of the United Nations, including UNESCO, World Health Organization, they all also still have this extraordinary amount of immunity on our soil.